viewers, JRV96 here, bringing you a Flight Simulator 2020 video in which we are in the second episode of the General Aviation Airport Spotlight, where I'll be visiting to some of the lesser known airports in the United States and in the rest of the world. Now, in the last episode, I visited Elizabeth Airport, which is a small uncontrolled airport located in Fisher's Island in New York State. Now, in this episode, we're going to fly southwestbound towards the airport of Falwell, which is a small uncontrolled airport located just north of Lynchburg, Virginia. Now, what's interesting about this airport is its runway slope. Looking at the chart supplement, this runway slopes about close to 5% westbound, which technically makes this airport a one-way airport. So, the standard practice whenever you're flying to this airport is if you're landing, you would have to land on runway 28, which is the runway that slopes upwards, whereas for takeoff, you would have to take off from runway 10, which is the runway that slopes downwards as well. So this airport is kind of like Courchevel and Lukula. The only difference is Courchevel and Lukula have far greater slope gradients than Falwell. So this is as close as you would get to Lukula and Courchevel in the United States. Now, in this video, I will be approaching the airport from the north, where I'm going to enter what will be the right downwind for runway 28, in which I'm going to land, do a full stop taxi back, in which I'm going to taxi to runway 10. Then I'm going to take off from runway 10, fly straight out for a little while, and then I'm going to do a 180 back to landing on runway 28, in which, since technically you can't fly a traffic pattern at this airport like you would normally do in other airports because of its one-way configuration. So that's why runway 28 is the runway to go for landing. Now, I'm going to jump in the Cessna 152, and with that being said, let's get straight to the cockpit. Alright, so here we are in the Cessna 152 as I'm approaching Falwell Airport from the north, in which I'm basically following this river down southeastbound to spot the airport. So now, looking at the airport directly in front of us right there, that's probably it, in which you could tell how much it slopes. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to descend down to pattern altitude of 1900 feet. So the one thing to consider whenever you're landing upslope is the flare, because if you come in flat on the flare, you may run the risk of landing on the nose wheel, which is something that you want to avoid. So, just like Elizabeth in the last episode, Falwell is another uncontrolled airport in which the CTAB frequency is 123.0 as is stated on the chart. And I'm going to continue my descent down to 1900 feet. Since the airport elevation is 939 feet, pattern altitude is roughly around 1900 feet. As I said before, Falwell is a one-way airport. So now there's 1900 feet, I'm going to level off, and at the same time I'm going to start making my left turn to join the right downwind runway 28. Alright, so right now we're on the right downwind for runway 28. There's the airport off our right wing, and now we've already passed the beam point, in which I'm going to go ahead and bring the power back around 1500 RPM and flaps 10. And I'm going to go ahead and continue my descent right before I turn base. Alright, now there's 1,700 feet. I'm going to go ahead and turn base. And continue my descent. Alright, so now we are on the right base for runway 28. So I'm going to go ahead and throw flaps 20. Around 70 knots is a good airspeed to be at on the base. So I'm going to continue descending. And then you'll get to see what I mean by a 5% slope gradient as we are about to turn final. So I'm going to go ahead and turn final now. Shallow that bank angle just a bit, so that way I line myself up with the runway. A little slow on the airspeed, so I'm just going to lower the nose, add some power, go flaps full. This is what I mean by a 5% slope gradient right there. It's like technically you're landing uphill as if you're landing on a ski slope pretty much. Alright, so right now we're on short final. Cleared of the trees. Wow. Now I'm going to go ahead and bring that power to idle. And touchdown. Let's see if I can exit off of this taxiway off to our right. Probably not one of my better landings since I kind of drifted off the center line, but I am amazed of how steep that slope is. Although this is no Courchevel or Lukula, in which the slope is much steeper than this. But as I said, this is as close to Courchevel and Lukula you're going to get in the United States. So I'm just going to go ahead and turn off my strobes, turn the taxi light back on, and we're going to taxi back to runway 10. This airport slopes a lot, and you can even look at the altimeter, in which if you look very closely, I'm at 880 feet above sea level. So this is why Falwell is considered as a one-way airport, in which it would definitely not make a lot of sense to take off from runway 28, considering the fact that you're going to eat up a lot of runway going uphill. Whereas for runway 10, it makes more sense since you're going downhill. One of the oddities of FS2020, somehow they put a taxiway sign on a taxiway, which that's kind of weird. I'm going to go ahead and continue taxiing. Those are some nice detailed houses right there. And you can see the taxiway is pretty narrow too, in which is definitely designed for an airplane like the Cessna 152. So now it looks like we're going to the very end of the runway. Falwell's 2,900 foot long. So in that case, for a Cessna, it'll be able to do that. If you're flying, let's say, a twin or a high-performance airplane, then you may have to apply the short field takeoff procedures. So now we're at the very top of the airport itself. So as you can see right there, we're going to go ahead and take off downhill. And you can see right away, as soon as you go downhill, the airplane wants to start moving. So you really have to be on the brakes in order for the airplane to stop where it's at. Otherwise, the airplane is going to start rolling down on the runway. So I'm going to brake right here, and what we're going to do is we're going to take off. I'll fly straight out for about 3 to 4 miles. Then we will do a 180, in which we're going to land on runway 28. So here we go. So now I'm going to go ahead and apply full power. And you're going to see that the airspeed is going to start to pick up rather very quickly since we're going downhill. The airspeed's alive. There's rotation speed, and we're airborne. Yep, this is Falwell Airport. Definitely a nice, fun little airport to go to if you're looking to go to unique airports that you've never heard of before. This is one airport to definitely stop by as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to climb up to 2,000 feet, and I'm going to kind of do a teardrop turn to land on runway 28. Now, try flying into this airport when the winds are not as favorable. Say if the winds are coming from the north or from the east right there, that could make for a very challenging airport to land at as well. So now I'm going to continue my climb to 2,000 feet. But just looking at the sight picture on final approach alone is part of the reason why Falwell is one of the trickier airports to land in the country. So right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start making this right turn to 130 so that way I can get myself set up to join the final for runway 28. Now there's 2,000 feet. I'm going to level off and then bring the power back. And even with the flare that I did, it probably came out a bit flat, which is why whenever you're landing at an airport that has such a steep gradient, you do not want to land the airplane flat, because when you're landing flat, combined with the fact that you have a sloping runway that goes upwards, you may run the risk of landing on the nose wheel. So I'm going to make this left turn back to 280 so that way I get myself set up for the straight in runway 28. There's the airport directly in front of us. So now I'm going to go ahead and start my descent. This airport doesn't have PAPIs or VASI lights like you saw at Elizabeth. So technically, this airport, I would only go there during the day. So now I'm going to go ahead and throw flaps 10. And then continue my descent. So that way you viewers can appreciate the slope of this airport. Alright, so I would say we're probably about 1.5 miles away from Falwell. I'm just going to keep the power at 15, keep going with the descent. Alright, I say at this point I'm going to go flaps 20. Still think I'm a little high right there, so I'm just going to continue my descent as is. Probably not get too low in order for me to clear those trees. And the fun fact about this airport that it is built on the side of a mountain. Just a food for thought. Alright, at this point I have the runway made, so I'm going to go flaps full. Just going to keep a little power in there. touchdown. Alright, so now I'm going to bring the flaps up, apply maximum brakes. In fact, tell you what, I might as well just taxi all the way to the end just for the sake of it, so that way you viewers can appreciate the slope of this airport and why it does not make sense to take off from runway 28, in which essentially you may not even be able to take off on that particular side of the runway at all as well. But it's like you're definitely landing on the side of the hill, pretty much. So now there's the very end of the runway, in which I'm going to make a right turn to exit. And then now we're going to go downhill to parking. I gotta admit, this is one of the trickier airports to land at, in a way that, unlike Elizabeth, where you have a very short runway, Falwell, you have a 3,000-foot runway in which any single engine prop, even some twins, can land at this airport. But then again, you really have to be on point in terms of mastering the. And there goes our parking. But the slope is clearly a big factor to consider going into this airport. You can even feel it on the taxiway itself. So I'm just going to go ahead and park the airplane right there on this tight down spot. And that's going to be it. So now I'm going to go ahead and secure the airplane, in which I'm going to go parking brakes. We're going to go ahead and turn off the transponder, turn off the rest of the avionics. So that basically includes the comm volumes. All right. Bring the mixture all the way back. Key out. And taxi. Pretty much everything else is out. Master's off. And that's about it. Well then, my fellow viewers, as you can see, this is Falwell Airport. Again, an interesting airport to go to for its slope. And with that being said, that concludes the end of this video, in which if you have enjoyed the video, feel free to hit the like button and feel free to hit the subscribe button, JRV96, especially if this is your first time seeing this YouTube channel, where I'm going to be posting FS2020 and prepared content usually every weekend or so. The General Aviation Airport Spotlight is a new series that I've introduced to the YouTube channel, in which these are some suggestions that you guys can try out in FS 2020 by visiting these airports like Falwell. With that being said, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys on the next video.